Hey everybody, welcome to week 5 of Argumentative Writing, 122 Composition 2. It's been a few weeks since I've done some videos, so welcome back. This is our week 5 video, and what I want to focus on with you today is talking about the essay prompt. Because we're at the point where we've been doing research, right? We're doing presentations, you're sharing research with one another, but now we're at the point where we're turning that research into an actual argumentative essay. So what I want to start talking with you about for this video is the prompt for the essay. So you can find this on Canvas for week 5. We're going to start with the prompt, and then I have an outline and a lot more materials to go over with you, and a lot more materials that will be posted to Canvas for this week. But let's start by looking at the prompt. So the rough draft for this one's due on July 31st. Comments, peer review for this one's going to be due on August 2nd. We are doing peer review for this essay. It'll be the last peer review session of the quarter. The final draft is going to be due, this is a different due date than I normally do, but I wanted to give you as much time as possible because this is our large project. It's due on a Sunday, so Sunday, August 6th is when that essay is due. And again, that's an unusual due date. I don't normally have things due on a Sunday, but I wanted to give you as much time as possible because this is, you'll notice, our longest project. It's 1,500 to 1,700 words or more, so it's okay if you go over the word count on this one. You'll probably find that it's easier to go over the word count than you think. Typically, I have students that have a lot to say about what research they're conducting. It's worth 200 points, and the required number of sources and texts that you're talking about during this paper are 6. So you need 6 or more. You can talk about more during the paper itself. 5 of them have to be from a research database, but if you've been doing your research on time, doing the annotated bibliography, you already have those sources. So you don't need to be doing any more research if you don't need to. If you're ready, you're ready. If you want to do more research, you can, but you need to have at least 6 sources in this essay. All right, let's look at the overview. So since the start of the quarter, the summer, we've been researching, right? You've been sticking with the main base topic that you chose a few weeks ago for like a handful of weeks now and researching on it. And now what we're doing is turning that into an argumentative essay. So there are 2 main tasks for this essay. The first is to synthesize sources together. So if you've ever written a synthesis essay, the first portion of this is a synthesis essay. It's a literature review. So you're going to synthesize 6 sources, research, and arguments around the approved topic. Essentially what synthesis does is it helps compare and contrast sources and information that you're finding. It discusses ideas, data, evidence, and it will help lead you into your argument. Okay, but it's important to talk about the overlap in sources, the differences between them, and why those similarities and differences are important, right? Why are sources similar? Why are they different? What does it mean? Each body paragraph in your essay will include at least 2 sources as a result. So when you're creating synthesis, you want to make sure you're talking about at least a few sources at a time to help create that relationship between them. So that's the first part, is a synthesis portion. It's a literature review. So if you hear me say literature review, that I'm talking about part 1. And then part 2, same essay, not a separate assignment, is you're building up to what your argument is. So after you establish the sides or those main themes of your research in the first portion, you're going to eventually lead into what is the best solution to the issue you're researching, or whatever it is that you're arguing for at this point. But the first portion of the essay is establishing those sides and what those main themes and points of discussion are around this topic. The latter portion of the paper is the argumentative portion. So you're talking about, here are all these different sides. Here's research that's been done so far. Here's what it means, right? Here's what it means for your topic and what your argument is. So I just want to mention that this assignment definitely builds on things that we've been doing in the annotated bib and the rhetorical précis in terms of concisely and accurately summarizing sources together. That's what a lot of synthesis is. And you're leading into your argument, right? It's not purely opinion-based. You've been doing a lot of evidence-based research, and you're appealing to logos. I have a little bit of a rhetoric review in a different video for this week, so if you need a refresher on what your rhetorical terms are, ethos, logos, pathos, you can check out that video. Okay, but you're appealing to logos logic. Okay, so it's not purely opinion-based, it's evidence-based. So the purpose, right, we've been doing this all quarter, but you're identifying an issue, you're looking at argumentative texts, sources, you're identifying those patterns, the main themes in there to synthesize them together, you're analyzing those different approaches, and then you're taking a side and you're actually going to be arguing for, right, what does it lead you to? What do you want your argument to be? So that's the argumentative synthesis essay that's on Canvas. Please take a look at this prompt more on your own as well. The other thing that's under week 5, lots of important things, but the other thing that I want to show you is the argumentative synthesis essay outline. So this outline you can go through, you can think of it almost as a checklist for what do you need in order to make sure you're successful before you submit this essay. I'm not going to go over the outline super in detail with you during this video because I think it'll make more sense when you review it yourself and look at the sample essay. There's a sample paper that's going to be posted under week 5 as well. And when you compare the outline with how the sample essay turns out, I think it's clear to see, you know, how does this outline translate into an essay format. So definitely take a look at the outline here and the sample essay, which you can find on Canvas. So here's what week 5, excuse me, looks like so far. It's not published quite yet while I'm recording this video, but you'll be able to see the essay rubric, some readings on here, this outline, the prompt, and some other materials that I'm about to go over with you. Okay, but that's the essay and that's the outline. Please let me know if you have any questions about the outline, the prompt, any requirements for this paper. Definitely send me an email if you think of anything. One other thing I want to show you before we move on to the next portion of this video, where I'm going to show you some slides and we'll talk more about synthesis. The argumentative synthesis essay rubric is on Canvas under week 5 also, so you can see what sort of criteria do I use when grading this paper, and I give you a more detailed rubric for this one because this is the most major project that we're completing during the summer. So take a look at the rubric. It's not great to view on video because the text is so small, but you can view this on Canvas. It lets you know how much each section is worth. So some of the portions or criteria that I grade for: your intro, your context, and your thesis of the paper, your support and evidence, how your essay is organized, how you integrate sources, do you use clear topic sentences, and so on. So there are some other categories on there. Please take a look at the rubric if you have any questions. Again, send me an email if you're curious about how I'm grading it, okay? All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is a little bit more about synthesis and literature reviews. If you're unsure what these things mean, or if you haven't written a synthesis essay before, I'm going to go over with you what synthesis means, some examples, what it might look like in an essay. So and these slides are going to be on Canvas also if you want to review them on your own a little bit more in depth. So let's start with talking about the essay, just as a review. So the prompt is on Canvas, but this is the longest project that we're writing this summer. So take a look at that word count. You need 6 or more sources, and your 2 main tasks are synthesizing and arguing. So part 1, synthesizing, right? What do sources say about your topic? What is this overlap or lack of overlap? Overlap, excuse me. And what does it mean? So what does it lead you to? It'll lead you into your argument. So now that you know the sides, the research, what are you arguing for? So there are a few main types of synthesis, and I have some links on this PowerPoint if you'd like to review these readings more in depth, and there are some more readings on the calendar. Please take a look at those too. But there are 2 main types of synthesis. Explanatory, which is where you're explaining your particular points of view and how sources differ and agree, versus argumentative. It's the same, except you're taking a side and arguing for one of those sides. So what is synthesis? Again, you're gathering information from a wide variety of sources. You're coming to a new idea, question, conclusion, or in our case, you're creating an argumentative thesis, and you're arguing for or against something, right? So synthesis, again, I've been saying this: where do your sources agree? Where do they disagree? What stances do they offer? Where is their overlap? But what's important about synthesis too is we don't just say, here's the overlap, but what does it mean, right? So what does that overlap reveal to you about this research, or why this research is important, or why this is a real world issue that's worth discussing? A literature review is synthesis. It's a synthesis of research that evaluates your sources, and it's making room for your own research or your own conversation that you're creating by showing us, again, what already exists for this argument. So I'm going to show you an example. This is, again, lower stakes example. Your topic is a lot higher stakes, I'd imagine, than the sample I'm going to show you right now. And this is a sample I use when I teach argumentative writing in person for writing 122 also. But I use this example of, let's say you're trying to have this argument about what is the best way to cut pizza, right? Should your pizza be cut in squares or triangles? And this is a very polarizing debate, right? There's side A, in our case, is going to be square cut, side B is triangle cut. And let's say you find some sources that talk about the history of pizza cutting, right? That seems to be a little bit more general. And then source B is a survey showing that triangle cut is preferred. And source C is an interview of people who say square is the best. And then source D is the origin of pizza, which is, again, more of a general source. But you'll see these sources are all about different things. They have different focuses. They have different arguments. But when you're putting them in conversation with one another, here's just, again, just an example of what it might look like when you're talking about your sources. And I've labeled mine sources A, B, C, and D, but you're actually going to be using author last names when you're synthesizing them together. So let's look at this example. So source D explains the origins of pizza, while source A goes a bit more in depth, not only looking at the origins, but at how pizza was originally cut. So while one source reveals the original way, neither source examines which method, triangle or square, is the better one. So what are we doing here? I've underlined some synthesis language. While one source does this, another does this, neither source is doing this, that sort of thing. You're creating that synthesis and you're explaining the relationship between those sources just by using a few keywords. However, in a survey conducted by source B, researchers determined that most prefer the triangle cut over the square. Conversely, right, in a next source, they determined that square cut is preferred. So then ultimately, etc., right, and it keeps going, right, and you're letting us know what does this lead you to. You'll notice some synthesis language here too that helps compare and express what that relationship is between. And then if we're concluding and adding an argument, therefore, right, thanks to this source information, thanks to source A's historical explanation, triangle was used long before square, and source B's survey results show that this method is still preferred. Triangle cut is the better method, right? So it's, again, this is a very low stakes example of an argumentative topic using sources. But what I mostly wanted you to see here is when you're creating synthesis, there's certain language you're using to express that relationship, between your sources, okay? The other thing, again, side A and side B might be very polarized, right? But maybe there's a third option, right, that you can argue for, almost as a compromise or a way between these two polar opposites, right? So we come to perhaps a side C, which is using both types in the same pizza. Okay, so again, you can make room for that, right? If you don't think that one solution is necessarily better than the other one, you can make room for a side C or your own solution. Okay, but essentially after researching, what conclusion are you coming to and arguing for? What is your best option? What is your best solution? What should we know about your topic? Something to note here is that synthesis also requires summary, and a literature review uses the main points of an argument from each source. So you'll want to identify those main themes of your sources. I'm going to show you some examples in the next video of how to identify those main themes, and the Venn diagram activity from week 5 is also going to help you do that. Okay, so identifying those main themes. The other things in this PowerPoint that you'll want to check out is the REST method for creating synthesis. It's just an acronym, really common acronyms for writing. REST will help you synthesize. So read two different sources as R, edit your notes and combine concepts that are similar or different. S is synthesizing or combining notes with what you already know. And then T, thinking about your new ideas and connecting them to what you already know, right, before you write your essay. And the next thing the last thing for this video that I want to talk to you about is one of the readings from the calendar is from Purdue OWL, and they talk about literature reviews. And part of that article talks about the organizational types. And there are 4 types from Purdue OWL that they mention that literature reviews commonly use these organizational types. The first is chronological, so you can think about organizing your sources by the development of a certain topic over time. So if that's really important to your topic, could be useful to use a chronological organization. Methodological is when you're organizing it by research methods, so maybe some of your sources were qualitative versus quantitative, some were empirical, some are mostly theoretical, and so on. And theoretical, you're discussing various theories, models, definitions to set the stage for your argument. And then I've highlighted this in a different color here because I think the best way to organize a literature review is by doing a thematic organization, because you're focusing on recurring themes that you're finding throughout your sources. So it's these themes, and you can create a really clear thesis when you identify themes. Again, the homework from this week is going to help you identify those for the Venn diagram. And as you're reading your sources, I'd be willing to bet you've already been finding those themes. Finally, the synthesis matrix. There is a blank version on Canvas. This can help you visualize the overlap between your sources, so please check out the synthesis matrix readings for this week. It's not required for you to submit a matrix, but it can help you when you're visualizing how do these sources overlap or not. Okay, so check out the matrix and email me if you have any questions. I'll see you in part 2 of this video.